Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, money, money.
Dollar, dollar. Dollar, dollar.
So Sonic Shadow Gens finally came out, and I was excited as hell, dog. I got the digital deluxe edition and everything, so I could play ASAP and stream it to one viewer. But the game was so good that I barely even noticed that at the time. In fact, before I kicked up my stream that day, I was just telling myself that I don't know how streamers could stream for beyond 3 hours without burning out. And yet here I was, going at it for nearly 5.5 hours straight, without noticing how long I was going for until I stopped because the game was just that good. But enough about my subtle Twitch channel marketing. I gotta talk about this game now. So to kick things off, the game has an optional intro made for people like me who might not have played Shadow the Hedgehog. It's just a little recap of Shadow's story essentially, mainly throughout that game, so that we can be fairly in the know for the game to come. And this section was actually pretty cute in its presentation, and a nice addition for any newcomers to Sonic games in general. So merci, Sonic team. Then once we jump into the game, we pick up where we left off at the end of Dark Beginnings with Shadow boarding the Ark again, only to run into his old buddy Black Doom before dropping us into the first level, Radical Highway. And, Space Colony Ark too, I guess. Now, I'm gonna let you all know from now, yes, I will be personally ranking all the levels in the game by the end of the video, but not act by act though, because that's too much thinking and hard work. So, we start off with a great introduction with the Ark though. A nice tutorial into how Shadow plays with his greatest difference from Sonic, at least for now, being his ability to stop time with Chaos Control. And they really want you to learn how Chaos Control works with this level, because I think it might be the level with the most constant use for it in terms of finding different paths to tread. It makes sense considering it's pretty much the only ability that he has at this point, but just something to note. But anyhow, speaking of paths, let me just save you all some time and talk about all the levels in general here, because a common theme you'll find in basically all the levels in the game is that it's great at showing you just how many different ways you can actually tackle it. You'll be making your way through your first run of the level when you pass by, a stray rail or a higher plane, or maybe like a little window in the corner that you're like, well, damn, how the hell do I reach that? I want to do that. And that's how they get you. It makes each rerun of the level that much more fun to go through, because there are just so many ways to shorten your time bit by bit, and that feeling you get when everything clicks and you're just like, oh, so that's how it works. It's just amazing every time. And of course, I can't not mention the absolute spectacle you see with each stage too. A bit less so with the Act 2 stages generally, but when the cinematics want to pop off, they pop off. Like, this is Frontiers level of spectacle, man. It's amazing. Then when you finish your first level, you're properly introduced to the white space. Now that I say that out loud, that sounds kind of crazy. But anyway, it's pretty much this game's open world, pretty much like Frontiers. However, I'd say it's far more polished than what's in Frontiers personally. Like, sure, there aren't any varied locations and there's less visual flair, because, it's literally just a void of time and space, but the cohesiveness and the challenges in the white space beat out Frontiers, I'd say. Probably due to it being more contained, because the challenges that you can do inside white space are essentially just the typically better ones from Frontiers' open world, the ones related to you moving fast. There's less variety in which challenges are available, but I'd much prefer that if they're generally more fun to do. Plus, as a bonus, basically every time you beat a full level or two, a new friend will appear for you to talk to. The only ones providing something related to gameplay though are Orbot and Cubot. And we don't talk about Orbot and Cubot, or their stupid rocket. Luckily, Omega's here to show those bums what a real robot is, and as usual, Omega wants nothing more than to throw hands with Eggman, But as is with basically all the characters, you get some fun dialogue to sift through, and they also change as the game progresses too, so you gotta make sure to go back to them sometimes. Besides our robo-dogs, you can also eventually run into Big, who we find out is basically omnipresent, Rouge, which I mean, she's Rouge, she's a certified baddie, and also a good friend to Shadow, we raid her. The GOAT himself, Sonic, though we only run into him for a cutscene unfortunately, but understandably considering Sonic Generations is going on at the same time. And of course, Maria and Gerald, who are pretty much the crux to Shadow's story here. Most of them don't have to do with anything story-wise, but that's perfectly okay. Not everything needs to be necessary to be appreciated. And then for every area or two that we complete, we find a boss area that needs a couple keys to unlock, and we find them by completing just some level challenges that get scattered throughout the white space afterwards. I think I really need to stop saying that out loud. It feels strange, it don't feel right. I think I'm gonna just call it the Void from now on. But anyways, the challenges typically aren't anything crazy hard, just shorter alternate versions of the levels we've completed that have to be done with some sort of condition fulfilled, like completing it with one ring available in the level, or abusing chaos control to beat a level in a really short amount of time. And for every set of those challenges that we beat, we get one of the keys that we need to unlock the boss arena. And you can usually tell what boss you're about to fight based on the stages that the challenges are from, since they're not always in order. Like for the first boss, you can take a wild guess on it being the Bio Lizard, since you have to beat challenges from the Space Colony arc to unlock it, or you know that Mephiles is coming up when you have to head back to Kingdom Valley to unlock his ass. And just speaking of Mephiles, can I just say that I low-key felt kinda bad for him when he dropped this line? Hell, he's even the only boss to seemingly be hidden away by the Void itself. Like, yeah, I know he killed Sonic and tried to doom all of time and space, but he was just feeling a little silly. Come on guys, give him a second chance. But hey, the bosses themselves are pretty dang fun. Each of them typically have a bit more emphasis on a certain ability that Shadow attained, and they're pretty damn fun, I'd say. Full disclosure, I might be a bit biased because of the pure spectacle of these fights, especially the final boss. Like, damn. Like, I won't straight up spoil it, but I kid you not, before Frontiers, I think the last time I felt that kind of hype for a Sonic boss was the final boss of Black Knight. But to be clear, I didn't play Black Knight when it came out. I copped that through very legal means around the good old year of 2012. And now, speaking for the gameplay itself, stellar. I mean, it's Sonic Generations at its core. Of course it's going to be great, but it somehow manages to be even better. Like I mentioned before, the level design just really incentivizes you to look around for better routes, and with all the tools at Shadow's disposal, that's more than a little possible. With his base abilities, Shadow has the regular boost, along with his Chaos Spear to activate switches and stun the enemies, and Chaos Control to stop time and freeze enemies and objects in place for 5 seconds. And because Chaos Control freezes those things in place without destroying them on non-homing attack contact, you can use them to vault you to new areas. Like freezing the rubble being thrown at you in Sunset Heights Act 1 at the right time lets you homing attack them to bring you to a higher, faster plane than the regular route. Now you might think that Chaos Spear sounds a little more underwhelming in comparison, and to those unaware of its power, you might think so. I certainly used to, but it actually has this funny little notch to it that the Twitter user Pluto found out, wherein if you shoot a Chaos Spear while you're moving through the air, it allows you to keep some of that forward momentum. This might sound like a minor thing, but you'd be amazed at the things you can actually do with it. Like, I've seen people skipping entire chunks of levels when they actually know the lay of the land well enough and just how to reach it. Cause since Shadow slows down considerably over time when he moves through the air, this really helps speed that up and shorten those leaderboard times, getting me booted out of the top 100 for most of the levels as soon as the game fully released. But anyhow, those are just the abilities that Shadow comes packaged with, He also gains new abilities as the game goes on with the Doom abilities. The first of these abilities that he obtains are the Doom Spears, and they're pretty nothing, to be honest. They just allow you to hold your Chaos Spear to target more enemies or objects at once, up to 5 of them. And honestly, you're not going to get all that much use out of these ones, unfortunately, unless if it's for cooler ideas and sprite fights. But the next one you pick up is actually one of my personal favorites, the Doom Blast. Because while you can only use it against Black Doom's minions that scarcely appear in levels, it literally lets you beat the hell out of them, blast them in the direction of your choosing, and then teleport towards them. You literally kick someone's ass and then use them for transport, dude. That is fly as hell. Plus, again, while there is the caveat that you can't use it on just any enemy, it does make it more obvious to you where there's an alternate path hidden somewhere around that area. The Doom Surf is the next ability you get, and for all intents and purposes, this is essentially just the replacement for Shadow's hovercraft from 06, and is the first of the 2 abilities that you get that are basically just Shadow's revamped vehicles. Now, while this varies from person to person, I'm personally of the notion that it's just way cooler having Shadow have the ability to do these things himself rather than driving a Jeep or riding a hang glider. But that doesn't mean I'm immune to how raw the look of Shadow with a gun or riding a motorcycle is. My heart isn't made of ice after all. But all that aside, I actually do really like using the Doom Surf, because the sections that you get to use it in are typically pretty fun, especially the bosses that it takes part in. But at the same time, there's not too much to say about it, because it's basically just a Shadow boat, so, you know, moving on. Now the Doom Morph is an interesting one, because when I first got this ability, I was not feeling it. I kept falling off of walls and going in directions I didn't mean to go in, and confusing myself as to why I could see rings above those orbs that let you latch onto them, but I could never reach them. I had this as my second least favorite ability initially, but even then I knew that it was most likely just because I couldn't use it properly. And then my eyes were opened, because once I actually figured out how to use the thing, it became my new favorite ability to use, purely for it being the most mechanically interesting one. It allows for a lot of skill expression when you can actually use it properly, and I just find that to be a lot of fun. Just hopping around from wall to wall and swinging around like I'm Spider-Man or something. That's Spider-Man with the hyphen, by the way. It really makes for a fun time. And then we come to the final and probably the most iconic ability that you gain, the Doom Wings. Barring the invincibility, this is basically Shadow's super form for the game, because when you get 50 rings, you can activate them and just soar through the level, while your rings will drain from you one at a time, just like a super form. Now, this is absolutely the coolest ability to get in the game, no doubt, and it's actually quite fun to just blast through areas that you normally couldn't pass through in that way. But I still have the Doom Morph and hell, maybe even the Doom Blast above this in terms of general gameplay, because while it's fun to use them, it does make it kind of a breeze to get through certain areas, and that kind of takes away from the difficulty a little bit. But that's not to say I don't absolutely love it anyways. It just feels like a bit of a cheat code, just like using Supersonic in other games would. And now here I'm just gonna drop the obligatory tier list section, starting with the Doom abilities. First up, we got the Doom Spears in D tier, because I'm gonna be real with you, you don't really get much use out of these things. Then a couple steps up in B tier, we have the Doom Surf, because while it does lead to some fun sections, it is basically just a boat. A good boat, but a boat nonetheless. Then next in A tier, we have the Doom Wings, which are really fun, but like I said before, kinda takes away from the difficulty a little bit when you do use them, so I couldn't have it below the next option, which is the Doom Blast, because I just like using people that just beat up for transport. What can I say? I'm a simple man. And then, unsurprisingly, we have the Doom Morph up in S tier by itself, because there really just isn't any other ability in the game that allows for this much freedom of skill expression, and I really do love that. And now we move on to the actual levels, and like I said before, not splitting them into the actual acts. Even though these images show that, I'm putting them together. They're one thing, one being. Now, for the sake of making things easier, I'm gonna save the explanation for the levels till the end. But anyways, let's kick it off with Rail Canyon in B tier, and then we move up to A tier where we get the Space Colony Arc, with Chaos Island right above that, and Radical Highway above that. And then in S tier, we have my two favorite levels in Sunset Heights, and then Kingdom Valley at the top. And I made sure to use a tier list format for this instead of just ranking them by number, because I don't want to give off the impression that any of these levels are bad. In fact, I don't think I could bring myself to say that any of them were lower than a 7 out of 10 at worst. I'm just 1000% biased to Kingdom Valley, and at least as of right now, I feel like I have the least freedom in Rail Canyon because it's, mostly rails in that canyon. Now, despite how amazing the game actually is, it has had a few detractors here and there. And you know what I have to say to them? Hey, that's okay. For the most part. Criticism is really just a part of the game for practically any form of media, games especially, and doubly so for Sonic games. It's important for criticisms to be made so the games can potentially improve with upcoming iterations. You'll never be able to please everybody, but listening to the general voices of the community is important, and I think melding your vision with the criticisms of your audience is a good way to improve. It's just that you typically don't want to dip too far in either one of those directions. Ignoring your audience entirely is basically a surefire way to slow your improvement, since it'd be much harder to find out what your audience dislikes if you just ignore them. But that doesn't mean that you can just let your audience take the reins, because voices amongst communities are seldom unanimous, and numerous people think that they know what's right and what's wrong for your series. And sometimes they sound so convincing that you might think that too. But I think it's important for devs to take what their fans say in stride, and see if it aligns with what their vision of the games actually ought to be. But I did say for the most part before, didn't I? And that's because I know we got some bums hiding around sometimes, trying to start some foolishness over nothing time and time again. And this isn't about people with legitimate criticisms, even ones that I or you might disagree with. This is for the people that practically hate for the love of the game, or the ones bringing up arguments so nonsensical that you wonder if even they believe it. If you run into these types, I beg of you to do yourself a favor and just ignore them. Don't engage with them. Instead, find your niche within the community and people you like being around, and I guarantee you'll have a much better time. But if your niche is being a rat bastard hater, however, just know I'm gonna find you and tickle your toes at night, homie. Essentially, I'm just saying, hey, it ain't right to attack people for having different but harmless opinions. People are gonna have different visions from you because we're all different after all, and that's okay. But I also beg some of you to please learn how to word your opinions and statements better, because I promise you'll find much less people being hostile towards you if you don't antagonize them or come off all haughty. Demeaning others simply for viewing things differently from you to prop your opinion up isn't going to attract the most endearing responses. I just dropped this section here to air out the unfortunate things I've seen from even before the game came out, so that I can hop right into what I've actually been loving from the community since it came out. This is my first time playing an actually new Sonic game day one with such a large community behind it, and it's actually been an amazing experience. Seeing people gush about the different aspects that they loved about the game, whether it be the story, the character moments, the spectacle, the gameplay, or hell, probably more things that I'm not even privy to. And it's made for an incredibly fun time playing the game, only heightening the already amazing experience that I had playing it myself. For me personally, I've been having the most fun just seeing everyone posting their leaderboard times and trying to find my own ways to beat them out myself. I'm not always capable of that, cause we got some real butt-cracked players out there, but I'll be damned if I said it ain't fun to try. Plus on top of that, seeing different people's strats for speedrunning each level is actually amazing to see unfold. Like, you'd be shocked at how well these people can optimize their runs. They gotta be inhuman, you know? Or maybe they actually are inhuman. Oh my god, it's Sonic the Hedgehog. Shout out to all my Inhumans out there. You've helped me realize just how average at best I truly am. Truly, this is a game where nearly everyone has something that they can rave about, even from places you'd almost never expect. Like, sure, critic reviews don't change how I feel about a game, but Jesus Christ, did anyone ever expect to see IGN giving Sonic games a 9 out of 10? And then I see big YouTubers raving about the game as well, which also helps spread the word even more. Like, the reception to this game has been absolutely spectacular, and I think it's fully deserving of that 1 million plus copies that sold on day one. Now, in some of my previous Sonic videos, I made it well known how excited I was to play this game, and it most definitely didn't disappoint. Well, except for those bums Orbot and Cubot. But besides them, I think this will be the definitive Sonic game in people's minds for a good while to come. It's just funny that it was a Shadow game that was the one to do it. What a glow up from his previous solo outing, huh? I'm both excited and curious to see how the game ends up doing sales wise, especially after the movie drops, cause honestly, they deserve their success. It's not often that a Sonic game comes out and there's basically nothing for people to poke fun at. Plus, along with Frontiers, it does make me happy to see them going back to trying to take themselves seriously in their stories. And while Frontiers felt a bit too melodramatic in its execution for me, with a few things I just couldn't take seriously at all, I feel like they got the spark a bit better with Shadow Gens. My only ask is that they balance it out a bit more like they did with the adventure games, for example, or Unleashed too. Because serious things are going on, but we're still having fun here at the end of the day, and that's the vibe I hope to see fully return. And honestly, at this point, I fully believe that Sonic Team and Sega can pull that off in the near future. Also, please give Amy her spunk back, please. I'm tired of seeing Amy discourse.